Go-to-market engineers to me are builders. They're not report builders. They're not ticket takers. They're not somebody who updates Salesforce fields. They really sit at the intersection of like revenue strategies, systems architecture, automation data, and increasingly AI.
Welcome to Human First, the go-to-market hiring show. I'm your host, Danielle Parker, head of marketing at Captivate Talent. Revenue operations is one of the fastest changing areas of go-to-market right now, and it's the most misunderstood when it comes to hiring. You've got people all over LinkedIn telling you that you need to get a go-to-market engineer and you needed one yesterday, but when we dig in and ask about what that actually means, there's a lot of founders and revenue leaders that either describe a Salesforce admin or they just plain don't know. My guest today has built this function from scratch. She's hired go-to-market engineers, and she's reorganized her entire team from RevOps into revenue effectiveness. And she has very clear opinions on what you actually need versus what you think you might need. Lauren Hughes is the VP of Revenue Effectiveness at Justworks and one of the most hands-on builders in RevOps right now. Lauren, welcome. We're so excited to have you. I'm so excited that you're here today, Lauren. Thank you for taking the time to chat with us. And I think it's a really cool time to have you as a guest on the podcast because you're in your role at Justworks, and you stepped in and basically rebuilt the entire revenue effectiveness organization from the ground up. I think you said, like 75% of your team is either new or in a different seat than they were before. So I want to just start off with why? Like, what was behind that decision-making process? What were you seeing across the org, and what was really driving that?
Yeah. I mean, revenue effectiveness is actually a completely new function for JustWorks and
Oh,
the first
cool.
leader to
Didn't know
be
that.
MC. Yeah. So it was born by my boss, John Bell. I can't take credit for that, but he joined JustWorks about 6 months before I did, and really like revenue operations and revenue enablement were operating on completely different silos. And he said, let's like put these two powerhouse teams together and like really build like a true revenue effectiveness function. And so, it was definitely like a different era of go to market then. Thinking kind of, back a whole year from now, and even
I
actually
know.
like
It feels
18
like
months
20
from
years.
now. Yeah. I started talking to my boss in February of 2025. So it's been about a year and a half since we first started talking about this, and so much has changed since then. But really, and like a lot of companies, they still both revenue operations and revenue enablement still really exist as two uniquely distinct functions. And a lot of them are traditionally like support functions, and even some might say back office. I mean, we think reporting, like CRM administration, training coordination, project management, process documentation. They're all like helpful, but larger reactive type functions. So the market changed really fast. And kind of we saw a lot more speed coming from like our partners and customers, and we had like a ton of tool sprawl at JustWorks. We are very much victims of tool sprawl, and AI like really changed what was possible with that, like kind of overnight. So I really kind of joined JustWorks at this awesome time where I could take these two really unique functions, put them together, and really see kind of what they could do. And so we figured, how do we kind of set out to figure out like how we could optimize like what exists, and really led to like a significant rebuild. The people on the team, like there's no one was bad or terrible, but really the roles themselves were like pretty outdated. And thinking about revenue effectiveness as like the operating system for growth, and really not that kind of traditional like back office or reactive function. That was really what we set out to build.
Yeah, so instead of, like you said, like being reactive, pulling CRM reports, someone like kind of puts in a ticket request. Instead, it was like, how do we be proactive in finding ways to drive revenue across the organization by, I guess, like being the connective tissue?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I've always kind of talked about revenue operations as like the quarterback or the connective tissue or the nucleus.
Yeah.
It's something a lot of people say, just because revenue operations uniquely touches so many different functions within each company. Like are so close to marketing, sales, customer success and support, but beyond that, finance, people, product, engineering. Like we've really touched like so many different areas. But really, kind of like the marriage of revenue operations and revenue enablement was such a unique thing that we really had to nail at Justworks. Enablement was just kind of like training in a vacuum with limited tool engagement, not a lot of measurement of the efficacy of their programming. And we really wanted to kind of take revenue operations and really kind of like the architecture and design of the revenue factory and enable it marry it with an enabling team that could really upskill the skills, talent, and kind of approach that our customer facing teams are taking in the market.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about like what that rebuild looked like? Like, did you introduce new roles? How the roles maybe shifted? What did you lean off of that was outdated? Just like an overview, I feel like would be really, really interesting.
Yeah. So on the revenue enablement side, which I rebranded the team to go to market readiness, I really wanted to kind of like let go of the past and embrace
Yeah.
the future and really like reground the company in the fact that the go to market readiness team exists for just that, to make sure that our customer facing teams and our prospect facing teams and our partner facing teams are equipped with the skills, tools, and resources they need to represent JustWorks with empathy in the marketplace. And there was a lot of noise around I need enablement on this, and really what they needed was like project management or like measurement or tracking. But it certainly wasn't making sure that our teams were equipped with the right skills and tools to represent JustWorks. And so from an enablement side, we said goodbye to some really traditional roles like first and foremost project management, but also a lot of classroom training outside of onboarding. It didn't really make sense in this new world to take people off the floor for an hour and put them in a classroom and say like, hey, let's teach you about something, whether it's a new product launch or a new country launch or whatever it might be. Like we have to meet people with learning environments that are more on the go and meet them where they're working and more of a just in time way. So we said goodbye to instructional designers as we knew them. Obviously, like AI is really kind of like reinventing how we create content, and the need for a traditional instructional designer kind of didn't make sense anymore. And similarly, from an LMS perspective, LMS administration, that just didn't really make sense for us to have a traditional LMS, and we really didn't need a team to administer that. And then on the revenue operations side, there was definitely a lot of like operators running around and doing a lot of interesting work, but largely like ticket taking and largely tool administration. And that's when I really introduced the go-to-market engineering function. And I said, hey, like kind of, ticket taking is a thing of the past. Agents should be doing that. We need people to build agents to answer tickets, and similarly coupling that with enablement. So
Yeah.
I had to get ahead of the retraining so the tickets don't happen.
Yeah.
Um, and then, we kind of said, like, we definitely need, of course, Salesforce system administrators are still remain so important. And strategic business process remains really important too. So really kind of like contextual experts of different parts of the customer journey, whether it be pipeline generation, whether it be kind of negotiation and closing, whether that be customer support and customer success, onboarding. We definitely needed RevOps business partners in those roles who really understand the context of our business to help kind of shape what a good process should look like. And I wanted to really pair those with builders who could actually go out and architect that for them.
I love that. And you said the hot topic of the day, the week, the month, the year, GTM, go to market engineer. It is one of the most talked about roles right now, I think, in RevOps, in probably SaaS tech, whatever we're calling it now. But
Thanks to
also I think one
Clay.
of the yeah, thank you, Clay. But I think also one of the most misunderstood. Um, so when you use that term and on your team, when you're looking at like, what do you actually mean, and what does that person do that a traditional RevOps hire doesn't or didn't?
Yeah. So go-to-market engineers for me are builders. They're not report builders, they're not ticket takers, they're not somebody who updates Salesforce fields. They really sit at the intersection of like revenue strategy, systems architecture, automation data, and increasingly AI. And so, we spent a lot of time kind of fixing broken processes of the past through revenue operations, and a lot of that was grounded in um, you know data and accuracy and really kind of like not really defining the process well and just trying to build automation around maybe like perhaps a broken process. And the GTM engineers really kind of like sit and ask like the what behind, and they don't always lead with like the how. So they really try to understand like where does the data live? How can we think about automating this? Like, should we score it? Can we make something happen, like routing happen instantly? Can we reduce human intervention in this step entirely? They're really like our GTM engineers are very consultative. They're not maintaining systems. They're really designing commercial infrastructure. So, and through that's through kind of their unique curiosity and ability to kind of like ask questions, diagnose a problem, and then really kind of come up with a technical solution that helps solve that problem with the hopeful end goal of eliminating human intervention in that. Like Salesforce admins like maintain the machine and go to market engineers like redesign.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. Now you're using like kind of car analogies, which is my thing. And we've seen this too. Like we've seen job postings for these roles like almost like double in over a year. Again, thank you, Clay. And I think some of them, and you've come across this too, where someone was like, I need a go-to-market engineer, but you were like, you need a Salesforce admin. Where do you think a lot of that like misunderstanding is coming from? Obviously, like LinkedIn and all of that plays a role. But yeah, I would love to hear like your take on it as someone actively hiring for like a legitimate GTM engineer.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think fundamentally, like the title like spread faster than the capability. So like the market kind of recognized a problem or like, decided that they needed to insert AI, or it was beneficial to them to insert AI into like, the customer life cycle and the customer journey. But we really didn't agree on like from a market perspective on like what the definition of a go-to-market engineer is. So I think everybody knows that our go-to-market motions are super manual, our teams are really slow, and AI should like in theory enhance all of that, make it faster, make time to buying faster. And the demand for finding someone who can help you do that significantly increased. But we like led with kind of like a new title for an old job, instead of leading with like the problem statement, and defining what that is. So, Salesforce admins who like are good in ChatGPT are not go-to-market engineers. A RevOps analyst who can like write a prompt is not a go-to-market engineer. And that disconnect is really because the title got super trendy. And the operating model like hadn't really matured yet. I think we're still kind of seeing that maturation of the operating model.
Yeah, it's kind of like when everyone wanted a growth hacker.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Um, yeah, I think that's really interesting. And so taking a step back, like you were saying, is like how do you diagnose that problem of like what someone actually really needs? Like if they do need the Salesforce engineer versus like what do you hear when you're like, okay, like yeah, go to market engineer is actually what you need.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's like the question probably is, are you trying to maintain infrastructure or are you trying to invent like a new capability? So, of course, like if you're trying to maintain an existing infrastructure, you probably need an administrator, maybe somebody's equally technically proficient, and perhaps in certain specific tools, but really like inventing a totally new capability and designing that from scratch is something that I think is appropriate for go-to-market engineering. I think if the pain sounds like, our Salesforce hygiene's bad and the fields are broken and reporting doesn't work and routing rules have to be cleaned up, like you're probably looking for just like a really strong RevOps administrator. But if you're thinking about like higher level things, like our reps waste a lot of time on like low value work, or we need automation across like really disparate tools, or we've got a bunch of tool sprawl and a lot of these tools are collecting really great data for us, but we're not really like, doing anything with them. How do we combine that data? Maybe you're seeking signals for us at Justworks. We were really trying to design more signal based workflows, and we wanted to figure out how to do that better, faster, smarter. If you're kind of trying to build a system that doesn't exist, you probably need to go to market engineer.
Yeah.
I think like the mistake that companies are making is, they try to hire like against operational discipline, and like they don't really realize that what they really need is like a strategic builder. So I think that's probably where the disconnect is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially with like these more trendy roles where like no one's going to come in and be like, I have 10 years experience as a go-to-market engineer.
Yes. That was something we ran into when we first set out on our search, kind of this time last year, to hire and staff out the go-to-market engineering function. Thinking about getting people with experience. Like nobody had experience as a go-to-market engineer unless you've been at Clay for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So really like, kind of going into, the hiring process, like was really unique because you weren't looking for somebody who had like, pre-existing experience, like on paper the way that you would expect it to be for other roles.
So going back to so even like you're going through it right now, looking for a new one, what does that process look like and how do you test for that, you know, builder mindset versus someone who maybe talks really well? Like you said, like you can't look at the resume and be like, "Oh, they have 10 years experience as a go-to-market engineer." What are some of the signals that they maybe have that experience or that mindset? Walk me through your process.
Yeah, yeah. It's really about diagnosing how someone thinks, which is super hard. And obviously, we had to do it through a case study and several rounds of interviews. Even today we're seeing a lot of these like AI interview kind of answering services pop up. And so it's really important to kind of reintroduce the case study into the flow of the interview process, because then we're able to really like see how somebody thinks. I think for us, when we launched the go-to-market engineering roles about a year ago, we gave them real, actual messy problems. We said, like, how would you fix these? So, we said, like, our inbound response time was really slow, our conversion's pretty poor. Reps are complaining about lead quality. Marketing says leads are fine. And like, tell us how you would build something to solve this. And we actually had the go-to-market engineers come into our office, present to a group of 4 or 5 of us, and like literally walk us through not only kind of their view and read on the problem given the data set that we had provided, but also like their exact technical map of like how and what they would build. And the strong ones really came with their own examples of like real builds. Like they actually went and built the solution for us, to really show us like how they were thinking and how and about solving those problems. So I think if a candidate like leads with like a tool as the solution, they're probably not the right fit, and they're probably more important appropriate for an administrator role. I think a lot of like average candidates like might kind of start to talk about process and like how to improve that process and like the handoff and things like that. But like the really good candidates are the ones that came in and like completely deconstructed the problem from a data perspective, and from a kind of technical integration perspective, and then came with like a complete system redesign. And they are the ones who really came with like some really good thought provoking questions. Like for that example about kind of inbound response times, like what's the SLAs? What signals exist? What part of the process is manual? Like what part of the process is requiring human intervention today? What should we be measuring? What's the desired outcome? And that's the kind of thought process that we were really seeking through.
Yeah. I feel like I want to talk about case studies for a minute because this is a very hot topic right now. It's coming up with almost anyone I talk to in the hiring process, and the range of opinions goes from like still super important to like I'm never doing them again because obviously with AI, everyone can make the perfect case study. And I was talking with Mark Roberge at Stage 2 Capital, who's a former CRO at HubSpot, and he's like, I want them using AI to prep it and do the project, but then where the real test is like when they do the live presentation and like, does it fall apart? Do they actually understand what it pulled? So love to know a little bit more about what your take on these case studies. Obviously, they're a super important part of your process, but how you're kind of has like how you've assessed them changed in the age of AI. Just
Yeah.
a little bit more about that.
Yeah, yeah, bingo. I would say to Mark's answer, like I want them using AI with like on their case study. I want them
Yeah.
to show that their slides can look perfect, and I want them to show that they can use AI to tell the story and to like lay out the problem and the solution. But really where the rubber meets the road is when they come talk to me in person and they present, they need to actually like know what they're talking about, and
Yeah.
they need to
Not
be
just
able
like
to ask the
accept the spit
questions.
out and like, yeah.
Yeah, and we've seen it fall flat, right? Like, we've seen people come in with their nice Gamma slides, and everyone's like, "Oh, Gamma, Gamma," because you can see the logo at the bottom if you don't pay extra for it,
Yeah.
and, like, the answers, they just fall flat, and it's so obvious that they've spent, less than an hour on the exercise. They thought AI was the solution. They, threw our prompt in there, and it spit out something, and they just thought they were gonna come and, like, chat with us, and we were gonna hire them, and that's just not the case. And so with these go-to-market engineering case studies that we did, like, very specifically, we're like, use AI to analyze our data and tell us what your AI said about our data. Like, that's interesting to us. But really, like, where we were able to test their skills is like the actual design of kind of the solution that they were looking to build, what kind of connections they use, whether it's like Clay, N8N, Zapier, whatever type of connectivity tools they used, and really kind of like walk us through their like design, like thinking. Like we would ask questions like, well, why would you use N8N or why would you use Clay in this situation? And that's where they could really, give us kind of really thoughtful answers that we're like clearly not able to give through the use of AI.
That's the pattern we're starting to see is like use AI because we want you using it in the job. We want to see how you use it to get this product, but also like make sure that you actually understand it and it's like being used as a tool for you to do better work versus a shortcut to just like get it done, make it look perfect.
Yeah, I mean, you can totally tell when someone just like loads something and it spits it out and they don't like feed it the context or feed it their own personal opinion. It's not in their own tone of voice. Like you can really like pick those things out, especially if you're like a pretty experienced AI user. You can pick those things out. So my advice to anyone going up against a job is be honest about the fact that you're using it, but you better be prepared to answer the questions and ask questions too.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like pretty alarming to me at this stage when somebody doesn't come back to us after receiving our case study and asking us like, clarifying questions. I want to double click and do a little bit more. AI was able to do this in 30 minutes. And you guys told me to spend an hour on it. What else can I look into for you? Like things like that to show that intellectual curiosity.
In these roles that you're hiring for right now, how important is the AI fluency bar and how are you assessing that? And it doesn't have to be just for go-to-market engineers. It can be across, the RevOps function, the full revenue effectiveness org. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I ask that question in every interview. I ask for kind of traditional job function questions for
Hmm.
some of the traditional roles that we're hiring for, but I always at the end ask, how do you use AI in your work? And a lot of the answers, like believe it or not, are very superficial. It's like, oh well, sometimes I use ChatGPT, and it's like, that's like not good enough anymore. So I'm really looking for people who are super intellectually curious. I don't know if I totally care if they're using it in their work, just as long as they demonstrate that they like know, what's available out there and what the trends are. For me, my advice I always give to my team, and I try to even give this sometimes through the interview process as well, is like you need to be looking outside just as much as you're looking inside. There's so many like awesome things happening. And I lie awake at night scrolling Instagram and I learn about all the new Claude launches of the day.
Yeah,
I know
I know,
my
right?
team's a little younger than me. They're doing the same, but they're doing it on TikTok. Um, but like, you've got to, in LinkedIn too, like you've got to just be like really up with the times. And you can really tell through an interview process if people don't know what's going on. I recently absorbed our sales development team. So I'm responsible for outbound pipeline generation now at Justworks as well. And I was interviewing for a director role recently, and I was talking about like my vision to build this like always on prospect engine where human SDR is kind of managing an agentic SDR and what that process looks like. And I was talking about the fact that my team had been building this for the last couple of months, and Salesforce just like rolled it out last week and had this amazing Bluebirds kind of integration with Zoom Info. And I was like, God, this stuff is just moving so fast. And the person looked at me like I had like four eyes, and they're like, what are you talking about? The Salesforce, that Salesforce rolled this out. I'm like if you're not looking at stuff like that, like big announcements from pretty big partners in the space, then especially as it pertains like very specifically to outbound pipeline generation, and you're interviewing for an outbound pipeline generation leadership role,
Yeah.
like it's kind of alarming.
Yeah. So, yeah. And like there is so much and it is hard to keep up with, but like, I don't know, like you said, it's like I scroll, like I still call it Twitter and I still go on Twitter and like I get a lot of information on there and like there's great resources on YouTube, but having that curiosity is so important. And we
Yeah,
see
and
that
and
too.
being up to date on what's happening in the market. I think like again, like stuff is just moving so fast. If you don't know that like Gong's rolling out an MCP connection to Claude any day now, like that's your job, like you're kind of in the dust.
Yeah, yeah, because you're not, yeah, I 100% agree. And we see that a lot. I don't want to take us too far off topic, but I could go into that
I know that I feel
definitely.
like we could talk about a lot.
Yeah, I know. Even on that note, so AI enablement is a role that you also recently hired for, which I think is super interesting, and we're going to starting to see a lot more orgs kind of adopt that approach. So obviously that's very different from a go-to-market engineer. Um, so how are you approaching like that role? How is it different from go-to-market engineer? How is that functioning across your org today?
I kind of mentioned at the top of the conversation, but when I assessed the enablement team situation when I first joined JustWorks, there was a lot of roles that were pretty obvious to me we're not going to be around for the long term, especially in the age of AI. And as I thought about kind of like the instructional designer and like the classroom trainer and the LMS admin and the project manager, and kind of like saying goodbye to some of those kind of traditional roles, it started to become more clear to me that the efficacy of a go-to-market readiness function is measuring the outcomes of our training programs and measuring how we as customer facing teams show up and represent our brand in the market. And so when I think about what that looks like from an AI enablement perspective, I set out to find people who could, kind of replace some of those traditional roles with automation and systems thinking, and really help us figure out how to kind of first and foremost meet the customer facing teams where they are and serve them up kind of this concept of just in time personalized learning. So, how does that manifest in kind of reality? We used to have people sit through hours of classroom training every time we launched a country launch. And we have we launched, I think, over 40 countries last year. So think about 40 hours of training
Oh gosh,
where
that's a whole
people were
week.
not, yeah, we were not on the floor. It's insane. And so, I might, and then also we might have trained you on that country, and you might not ever have a prospect that's interested in that country, or the prospect's interested in that country like 6, 9, 12 months from now. And then you
Yeah.
forget all the stuff that you were asked to train on in that hour. And so, this idea of like just in time personalized learning is like you're on a call with your prospect. They mention that they're interested in said country, and your just in time learning platform tooling kind of just spits up a little automatic reminder to you saying, hey, you didn't take that training class. Now you actually have a prospect who's interested. You might as well go take that training class, hear about that country, so that when you go back to talk to your prospect in the next follow up call, you're really well versed about the country that they're trying to enter. So I think like finding these AI enablement people who can help us, build tooling that meets the reps where they are and that's highly personalized, measure outcomes and efficacy of our training programs, use analytics and data to tell us what to actually train on, what's not landing across the floor, how are different populations of people behaving or not behaving, and then how do we provide them more personalized and custom training to help change those behaviors. Like that's really what I kind of set out to find. And of course, we have AI role play. Everybody does now. Of course, we have, AI created training videos like everybody else now, and that is part of the scope of their role. But beyond that, it's really about kind of measurement and using data and analysis to identify these kind of just in time personalized learning opportunities for our customer facing teams.
And I imagine that like fits the motivation of the rep so much more versus like we launched in this country, you have to sit through this training to check a box versus like, hey, like this came up in this call, you need to take this so that you can like properly answer their questions.
Yes.
Like that to me is just like, okay, like I have a reason for doing this versus like, ugh, another country launch, gotta check this
Yes.
off and I'm gonna zone out for an hour.
Yeah, I mean, we just don't want people like being pulled off the floor. We want
Yeah,
them spending
exactly.
time with customers and partners and prospects, and whatever we can do to meet them where they are in their flow of work and deliver that personalized learning opportunity is really kind of like money. And so something that was completely impossible before AI.
Yeah, that's the thing is like there's so many new things that are just like even possible and you need to find people who think in those terms of like what is now possible.
Yeah, no, and fortunately, I was really lucky to have I have two AI enablement leads. One was with Justworks before we transformed the team, and he's really stepped up and grown into his new role and taken the bull by the horns and adopted the new technologies and ways of working like such a pro and such a star. And he even really amplifies. His partnership with other teams through kind of like his knowledge now and use of the technology that we have. He partners really closely with our people team and tries to help through kind of training videos and measurement, setting up measurement for other groups, which is awesome. And then I have another guy that's really kind of focused on the just-in-time learning, who's coming up with amazing ideas all the time, and we're now kind of exploring platforms where we can be in a conversation between a prospect and a rep, and the prospect asks a question, the rep doesn't know the answer. Instead of saying like, hey, I'll get back to you on that, like the answer just pops up on your screen, you can read it in real time and not disrupt the flow of the conversation. So we're really exploring a lot of like really cool technologies. There's so much awesome stuff out there, and I'm looking forward to seeing what these two rock stars can continue to do, because they really are changing the name of enablement, not just at JustWorks but in the market.
That's really cool. That's like the dream state, right?
Yes, yeah.
And also, so speaking, you've seen this pattern emerge. Obviously, I'm sure this played out in how you kind of restructured the team at Justworks. Um, and in RevOps teams, this middle management layer is starting to thin out, and you're seeing way more resources and spots available for what you're calling like those builders, those junior builders. Maybe they're learning the strategy from people who are senior on the team. Can you walk through what you're seeing in that case, and how, and even like, get your crystal ball out and see what you think the RevOps teams and function is going to look like, in a few years, what we're moving towards? I know your ideal view of this. We've chatted about that before, but
There's kind of grounding reality in this kind of concept that AI compresses organizational layers because coordination can actually scale now. And it really changes kind of the name of the game and as it relates to leverage. So, historically, scale often meant like layering managers between leadership and execution. And if AI handles things like documentation, analysis, task orientation, QA support, workflow execution, you kind of need fewer people to do that like level of coordination. So, what I'm seeing, I'm feeling, I'm looking in my crystal ball and thinking we might start to see more of is you have these kind of like strategic senior like architects who are kind of helping to design the system, work cross functionally. Maybe they're like really fast moving operators, and they're paired with technical builders. And there's no world in which you don't need people who have business context kind of paired with that builder who has technical proficiency. Like that to me is like probably like the dream pairing, like having somebody senior who's super strategic, that works cross functionally, that's a fast operator, and pairing them with a builder who's like highly technically proficient. Those people should be your biggest unlocks. And management layers in between those two probably doesn't make a lot of sense going forward. So, managers of managers are going to be harder and harder to justify, I think.
yeah. So what does that mean for you for the like RevOps career path, and how you think about building teams and the types of people that you're hiring? Obviously a lot more builder mindset. And then how do you get from like that builder to that more senior architect, as you were saying?
Yeah, I think it's like I do think the roles are becoming a little bit more polarizing, and I think it's a really good thing. I think it's super interesting because the super technical people who in the past maybe had like a very technical mindset, but didn't really have good business process or analytical thinking. Now kind of have to have a little bit of those things, and it kind of forces them to be a little bit more nimble there and a little bit more kind of all encompassing in their thinking. And then the strategic operators who don't really have technical proficiency kind of now have to have a little bit of that technical proficiency. And where they win is really like developing the cross functional understanding. So being able to understand how other cross functional teams operate and how their system or their revenue factory that they're responsible for building, how it connects with other kind of factory type mindsets of other teams. So I think, uh, the career pathing becomes an interesting conversation, and it's one that we've talked a lot about with my revenue operations leader at JustWorks, and I think that it will eventually somehow mirror. Kind of what you see on the engineering side too. Like it's not the growth will not be tenure based anymore. It will be skills based, and it will be once you kind of demonstrate that you can actually technically build something, you'll have to then demonstrate that you have cross-functional understanding. Once you demonstrate you have cross-functional understanding and can technically build, then you'll have to demonstrate how you can kind of think kind of bigger picture and more kind of forward-thinking design. So it's really interesting how things will evolve, but I do think it's going to be a lot less tenure based going forward, and a lot more kind of do you check the boxes on some of these maturity and experience type kind of working relationships,
Yeah, that's
working
super interesting.
experiences.
Good tips for anyone in RevOps listening.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you're not technical today and you're answering tickets without building agents to answer tickets, or if you're an admin of tools and you're not thinking about learning some of the other AI technologies that are out there, whether it's Clay or N8N or Zapier, or we use a lot of Airtable, we use a lot of
Mhm.
Cloud Code. Like if you're not thinking about learning those things, like now is the time. The train has left the station, you will be left behind,
Yeah.
for sure. And then if you're, the kind of back office like revenue analyst and you're not using AI to leverage your analysis and take it to the next level and go deeper on being more proactive from an analytical perspective. I mean, all of those things, like people need to be like really thinking ahead because the roles of the past are absolutely changing and they're changing very quickly.
Very quickly. I'm gonna switch lanes a little bit, which is interesting. We talked about this, I think last week when we were catching up. That Justworks specifically, you guys are at a really like interesting point in this journey because you have enough budget, enough infrastructure to like put a lot of these things in place to move very quickly, but you're not yet like huge org that's so compliance restrained, like it's gonna take 6 months to get access to Claude that you work there. So I think for like earlier stage founders, maybe Series A who don't have as many resources available as people at Justworks, like what parts of the process or parts of how you're thinking about this can they adapt that are maybe less resource intensive?
Yeah, I mean, for early stage founders, I wouldn't even go out and hire a GTM engineer. Like the core of an early stage company right now would be to like get your foundation right. Go-to-market engineers are not like magicians. They
Yeah.
can't just come into like a broken process, broken data,
Yeah. You can't
not
GTM
yeah.
engineer your way to product market fit.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And you can't GTM engineer your way to like this magical, customer journey foundation either. Like
Mhm.
if you happen to find your customer journey and if you don't understand what your ICP is, and you don't have clean data, like you can't just go in and like start building agents. Like that's not gonna
Yeah.
work. So I would really focus on getting the foundation right, getting like the data layer right, and really like thinking through like, what does clean data infrastructure look like? What is clear ownership? What's like system discipline? Like what do you need to be, disciplined in your system building? And later, anytime you want to introduce a GTM engineer or start to build agents, um, going back and doing it on top of a clean foundation will be so much easier. We probably spent the last year at JustWorks cleaning up our data in Salesforce, cleaning up our tool integrations, better adoption of our tools. When I first joined JustWorks, conversational intelligence is so rich with data, and there's so much you can do with conversational intelligence. And I always say that Gong was one of like the first AI platforms like 10 years ago, and nobody knew what AI
Yeah.
really was then, but like Gong was it. And our conversational intelligence is so powerful. It's such a powerful data set for us. And when I first joined JustWorks, I kind of started to dig in, and I quickly realized that something wasn't set up the right way or integrated the right way, and like 50% of our calls weren't being recorded. It's like, what? So get all those,
Those
get
moments, I've had them before where you're just like,
Get yeah, like, get
"No."
your setup done right, make sure your systems are integrated the right way, make sure all the things are turned on the right way, start capturing that data and start capturing it in a really clean way, and later when you're ready and your product market fit is there and your ICP is defined and your systems are stood up and the data is starting to be collected and organized the right way, then when you're ready, go and layer on the agents. But, like, it's not the highest leverage, role in, like, a very early stage company at this point.
So RevOps, revenue effectiveness, is and we're hearing this a lot that like it's the entry point for AI across the org because like you said earlier, like you're that connective tissue. You clearly believe this. Like you've hired those AI enablement roles, which I'm very jealous of. That sounds awesome. Um, you have the go-to-market engineers, your team's running fast. So what does it actually mean in practice? Like how has your experience been helping enable AI, not just within your own organization, but maybe like across the org and, someone who's on one of those training modules now that it gets popped up that's like your prospect mentioned this country, you haven't taken that training. Like what is that like?
I think for us, so of course, like yes, we are kind of the front door for the go-to-market organization in terms of AI and AI literacy, AI transformation, and we've kind of like started within our own house and by hiring the go-to-market engineers, pairing them with AI enablement specialists, and kind of pushing certain people who are technically proficient on the revenue operations team and even the broader revenue effectiveness team to like really adopt technology first. We were all on Cloud Cowork, early February, like right away. I didn't wait for our Claude Enterprise account to be ready for the entire org. We went through and we bought it for ourselves within the revenue effectiveness team, and we worked ahead and got everybody up and running and started using it quickly. Migrating over to enterprise was kind of a nightmare. I'm not going to lie, but
Yeah.
we really started first within our own house, and so we did a lot of lunch and learns and sessions with the go-to-market engineers where they were learning through external forums, bringing that learning through external forums back in house, teaching the broader revenue effectiveness team different use cases, kind of hacking together over lunch. And now we're kind of at the state where like most of revenue effectiveness is like very embedded use of AI in their day to day. And now we're at the point where we're extending that to other teams. So I recently inherited the sales development outbound pipeline generation part of our organization, and we're trying to train the outbound pipeline generation team on best practices in using Claude for certain things as it relates to their motions. Similarly, with account executives, similarly with our customer support and customer success teams, onboarding. So a lot of the learnings that we have cultivated within our own revenue effectiveness team are now kind of spreading to the rest of the go-to-market teams. And we've also jumped in and helped other teams too, like our people team and various other parts of the organization. So we really are trying to make sure that we even though we're not like kind of the centralized training function for the company, we really are centralized training for revenue. We are trying to help out wherever we can and really trying to kind of share our skills and knowledge to up level the rest of the organization.
Yeah. I think you at Justworks, you guys are very ahead of the curve, and I'd love to know like where else are you looking? Like who are you looking at that are like, "Ooh, this is a really great RevOps model." Is there anyone you're like talking to or following that you're like, "I'm learning a ton?"
Yeah, I'm obsessed with Kyle Norton, like totally
Oh,
obsessed
yeah.
with him. He's such a star. But he's great. He's out there. He not only um talks about AI and building a really high performing team, but he like really truly lives it himself and he demonstrates how he does that on a regular and consistent basis. And so when you think about kind of traditional people out there, chief revenue officers and similar roles, asking people on their teams like build me this, build me that, and he's talking about sitting on the couch watching TV at night, looking at YouTube videos and like hacking his own things in Cloud Code. Like that's really that's where the market's going. That's where people really need to realize that, like, if you don't do that now, like, you will be left behind. And, he really, like, demonstrates that he cares about learning just as much as he cares about, building a high performing team that's also learning. So, he's where I look a lot. And I'm pretty religious about listening to his podcast. Of course, like, a lot of these community events that are happening, more so now than ever are really great places to learn. There's a lot of vendors that organize dinners and I'm always rolling my eyes like, oh, here's another vendor dinner. But every time I go to one and I talk to people who are like-minded for us, it's really nice to be able to share ideas and engage at that level. Conferences too. I mean, a lot of times I go to conferences and e- even if I'm ahead of a lot of other places in the room. I still learn things and I still pick up things. And then I kind of walk away and pat myself on the back. And I do have a very high bar for my team and I'm really focused on speed and delivery and output. I kind of walk away sometimes saying like, okay, we're not as slow as we think we are, or we are doing pretty good here. So that helps a little bit too. But it's so important. I know we said this earlier, but it's so important to be looking outside in as much as you're looking inside out right now,
Yeah,
more
I
now than
love
ever.
those. Yeah, I think that's so important too is, like, even as, like, a marketer, I have, like, I have, like, a couple different group chats where we're just like, "What are you doing with AI? Like, what is like, how are you learning? How are you growing? How are you building? How's your team using it?" And that's so helpful, and then, yeah, like, going to those dinners and just, like, hearing from other people that are outside your bubble too.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us are trying to solve the same problems. Like if you're in marketing, sales, customer success, customer support, at any stage company right now, like the problems are all the same largely. It's
Yeah.
kind of the how you get to those solutions that are really different. And it's not just how through technology or how through AI skills and proficiency or how through how much you spend or who you hire. There's a lot of kind of different ways to get to solve these really common problems in our industry. And so sharing those different paths and different ways is really fun. I was joking with my team earlier today because my biggest pet peeve my entire career has been duplicative work. I hate when I find two different teams that are doing the same thing. And
Hmm.
I finally, like in this stage that we're in, I have to be okay with that. And I'm trying to have this like personal moment with myself to
Like Zen
say,
moment.
yeah, I'm like, that person's doing the exact same thing as this other person, but that guy's doing it in Clay, and this one's doing it in Salesforce, and this one's doing it in NAN, and maybe that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
maybe it's okay that we're doing it three different ways because eventually one of the ways will win. But the learning that those three people are taking on their journey to kind of like find the final stage solution or outcome that we're looking for is so valuable. It's valuable to the individual and it's valuable to the entire team who's working on that shared problem. So my epiphany moment of this morning was like I have to be okay with duplicative work and just be comfortable and excited and motivated by the fact that everybody's learning and they're learning together.
Yeah, which is like kind of a return to why a lot of us fell in love with tech in the first
Yeah.
place, was like doing that. Sorry, I'm getting like very
Yeah.
poetic now. But so for a founder, revenue leader listening right now and is like, oh my God, I want to be Lauren when I grow up. And maybe they're thinking about like their first RevOps hire. Maybe they're like, hey, like a lot of what she was saying about a go-to-market engineer is resonating, that like that is the problem I want to solve. What are like one or two things they should get really clear on before even like writing a job description or, hiring a recruiter? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Definitely define the problem, like full stop, like define the problem. I think I said when I came to Justworks, we were victims of tool sprawl and we let every single vendor in the market tell us what our problems were. And then they convinced us to buy the technology to solve those problems. And we didn't implement that technology properly and the problems never got solved. So focus on defining the problem. Like, what is it that you're seeking to define? Don't hire a role because LinkedIn told you to, or I told you to, or another podcaster told you to. Like really truly define like what problems are unique to you and your organization and really start there. And then from there, like understand whether you need like maintenance or like invention. If you need maintenance and you're talking about cleaning up Salesforce and you're talking about cleaning up workflows and like, defining ICP and things like that, like you need to focus on that before you focus on invention. So, don't hire a go-to-market engineer who's a builder and technically proficient and looking to invent and design systems if you don't even know what system you're trying to design. Then you'll end up with these go-to-market engineers that are bored or unchallenged or cleaning up data. And that's really not what they're meant to do. And I think also the last thing I would say is just be really honest about your operating maturity. So if you have messy data, you have undefined processes, you have unclear ownership, like AI is not going to fix that. And hiring someone and spending all of that energy and money because they're becoming a lot more expensive to hire someone who's AI proficient isn't going to solve those problems for you.
Honestly, I would argue that they're going to make them worse.
Worse, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, because you're going to have a really great rock star person sitting there twiddling their thumbs, like ready to build, and they have nothing to work off of.
exactly. Or like, the data is really unclear. And yeah, totally. Thank you so much. Like, this was truly a pleasure and a joy on our end. And I know this episode is going to be very popular.
Awesome. Yeah, and it was so fun to work with you. And I will say if we can fit this in, being partners with Captivate has been awesome for us at JustWorks, for me. I've known Bree actually for quite some time.
She's
She's
the
like one of the first
best.
ever RevOps recruiters. Like, come
Hmm.
on. But I've known her and I followed her for quite a while, and I've been on both sides of her, using her to hire for my team, and also looking for new roles through her connections for myself. And working with her is just amazing, and I recommend her to anyone who's looking to hire unique talent in this kind of futuristic role of revenue operations.
Oh my gosh. Okay. That was totally off the script. That wasn't
I know,
even
but like
planned.
add it. She's great. I love her.
Lauren, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. And I think this is going to be a great conversation about how the RevOps org is changing probably more quickly than any other function of go-to-market, between the new role of go-to-market engineers versus hiring for what you think you need and what you actually need. And there were just a lot of really great takeaways for anyone looking to hire for this function or build out the teams themselves. If you want to follow Lauren's work or connect with her, we'll drop her LinkedIn in the show notes below. And if this episode was useful, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might like it too. We'll see you next time on Human First, the go-to-market hiring show.